Yes, it is permissible to run two sub-feeders to the detached garage, one originating from the main electrical panel and the other from the generator panel. This approach allows for the electrical isolation of the garage from the apartments situated above it. Regarding disconnect requirements, the disconnect for the sub-feeder originating from the main panel must be installed within sight of the garage structure. Conversely, the disconnect for the sub-feeder connected to the generator panel is mandated to be located directly at the generator panel itself. While it's not a mandatory requirement to group the disconnects for the two sub-feeders at the garage location, doing so can enhance convenience and improve overall safety. A recommended configuration for this setup involves firstly, installing a main disconnect specifically for the garage at the garage location. Secondly, running a sub-feeder from the main electrical panel to the garage and connecting it directly to the main disconnect. Thirdly, running a separate sub-feeder from the generator panel to the garage. This sub-feeder should be connected to a transfer switch if an automatic generator system is in use. Alternatively, if a manual generator is employed, it should be connected to a separate disconnect. Fourthly, connecting the two sub-feeders to the main disconnect located at the garage. This particular configuration provides several advantages, including the ability to firstly, isolate the garage's electrical system from the apartment system. Secondly, disconnect the sub-feeder coming from the main panel for purposes of maintenance or in case of emergencies. Thirdly, seamlessly transfer the garage's electrical system to the generator during instances of power outages. Additional considerations include firstly, ensuring that the sub-feeders are appropriately sized in accordance with the electrical load requirements of the garage. Secondly, ensuring that the transfer switch, if one is utilized, is correctly sized and properly rated to handle both the generator and the anticipated load. It is strongly advised that the entire electrical system undergoes a thorough inspection and testing procedure conducted by a qualified and licensed electrician. This will help to ensure the safety of the installation and compliance with all relevant electrical codes and regulations. This includes adherence to the National Electrical Code, commonly referred to as the NEC. The NEC provides comprehensive standards for electrical installations to ensure safety and proper functionality. Article 225.31 of the NEC addresses the requirement for disconnecting means for outside feeders and branch circuits. This section generally mandates that a readily accessible disconnecting means be provided where outside feeders and branch circuits supply a building or structure. In the context of a detached garage, this means that a disconnect must be installed either inside or outside the garage at a readily accessible location nearest the point of entrance of the feeder conductors. The purpose of this disconnect is to allow for the complete isolation of the garage electrical system from the main power source, which is crucial for maintenance, repairs, or emergency situations. Article 225.32 further elaborates on the maximum number of disconnects permitted. It generally allows for up to 6 disconnects for each feeder or branch circuit that supplies a building or structure. However, it is important to note that these disconnects must be grouped together in a readily accessible location. In the case of a detached garage with 2 sub-feeders, one from the main panel and one from the generator panel, it would be compliant to have 2 separate disconnects provided they are grouped together. However, as previously mentioned, a single main disconnect that can isolate both sub-feeders is often a more convenient and safer option. When selecting and installing disconnects, it is crucial to consider the ampacity of the conductors and the connected load. The disconnects must be rated for the maximum current that they are expected to carry. Overcurrent protection, such as circuit breakers or fuses, must also be provided to protect the conductors and equipment from overload or short-circuit conditions. Article 230 of the NEC covers service entrances, which are the conductors and equipment that bring power from the utility company to the building. While the sub-feeders to the detached garage are not technically service entrances, some of the principles outlined in Article 230 can be applied to ensure a safe and reliable installation. For example, Section 230.70 requires that service equipment be readily accessible and located as close as practicable to the point of entrance of the service conductors. This principle can be applied to the location of the main disconnect at the detached garage. Article 250 of the NEC deals with grounding and bonding requirements. Proper grounding and bonding are essential for electrical safety, as they provide a low impedance path for fault current to return to the source, which helps to trip overcurrent protection devices and prevent electrical shock hazards. In the case of a detached garage, a grounding electrode system must be established. This typically involves driving ground rods or connecting to a metallic water pipe system. The grounding electrode system must be bonded to the metal enclosure of the main disconnect and to any other metal parts that are likely to become energized. The neutral conductor must also be bonded to the grounding electrode system at the service entrance or at the main disconnect. Article 310.15 of the NEC provides guidance on conductor ampacity, which is the maximum current that a conductor can carry continuously under specific conditions of use without exceeding its temperature rating. When sizing the sub-feeders to the detached garage, it is essential to consider the ampacity of the conductors. The ampacity of the conductors must be equal to or greater than the non-continuous load plus 125% of the continuous load. Continuous loads are defined as loads that are expected to operate for 3 hours or more at a time. In addition to conductor ampacity, it is also important to consider voltage drop. Voltage drop is the decrease in voltage that occurs along a conductor due to its resistance. Excessive voltage drop can cause equipment to malfunction or operate inefficiently. The NEC recommends that voltage drop on feeders should not exceed 3% at the farthest outlet for power, heating, and lighting loads. To minimize voltage drop, it may be necessary to increase the size of the conductors. Article 408 of the NEC covers switchboards and panel boards. A panel board is a component of an electrical distribution system that divides an electrical power feed into subsidiary circuits, while providing a protective circuit breaker or fuse for each circuit, in a common enclosure. The main disconnect at the detached garage may be housed in a panel board. Panel boards must be listed and labeled, and they must be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. The panel board must have sufficient ampacity to accommodate the connected load, and it must have enough overcurrent protection devices to protect all of the circuits. Article 445 of the NEC addresses generators. When installing a generator to supply power to the detached garage, it is important to comply with the requirements of Article 445. This article covers topics such as generator sizing, overcurrent protection, and disconnecting means. The generator must be sized to provide sufficient power to meet the load requirements of the garage. It must also be protected against overcurrent by a circuit breaker or fuse. As previously mentioned, a transfer switch may be used to switch between the utility power and the generator power. The transfer switch must be listed and labeled, and it must be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. The transfer switch must be rated for the voltage and current of the generator and the load. Article 547 of the NEC covers agricultural buildings. While a detached garage is not typically considered an agricultural building, some of the principles outlined in Article 547 may be applicable if the garage is used for agricultural purposes, such as storing farm equipment or housing livestock. Article 625 of the NEC addresses electric vehicle charging systems. If the detached garage is equipped with an electric vehicle charging system, it is important to comply with the requirements of Article 625. This article covers topics such as circuit sizing, overcurrent protection, and ground fault protection. The charging system must be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and must be listed and labeled. State and local electrical codes may also impose additional requirements for electrical installations. It is important to consult with the local authorities to determine which codes are in effect and to ensure that the installation complies with all applicable requirements. A permit may be required for the electrical work, and an inspection may be required after the work is completed. It is always recommended to hire a qualified and licensed electrician to perform electrical work. Electricians have the knowledge and experience to ensure that the installation is safe and compliant with all applicable codes. They can also provide valuable advice on the design and layout of the electrical system. When selecting an electrician, it is important to check their credentials and references. Make sure that they are licensed and insured, and that they have experience working on similar projects. It is also a good idea to get multiple bids from different electricians before making a decision. In summary, wiring a detached garage with a studio apartment above requires careful planning and attention to detail. By following the guidelines outlined in the National Electrical Code and consulting with a qualified electrician, it is possible to create a safe and reliable electrical system that meets the needs of the occupants. Running 2 sub-feeders to the garage, one from the main panel and one from the generator panel, is permissible, but it is important to comply with the disconnect requirements and to ensure that the sub-feeders are properly sized and protected. Grouping the disconnects at the garage can improve safety and convenience. Additional considerations include grounding and bonding, voltage drop, and compliance with state and local electrical codes. Remember, safety is the most important part of any electrical installation.